Welcome, everyone. Today, as we mentioned, is all about learning breathing practices for youth of all ages. And Desiree and I will be guiding you through how to scaffold and differentiate a bunch of different strategies for the diverse communities that you're serving. So the first outcome is we want you not only to be thinking about others, which you so naturally do every single day, but by practicing these tools with us, we want you to leave feeling like you've enhanced your own well-being. Secondly, the goal is that you'll be able to, by the end, to facilitate some powerful breathing techniques to the diverse youth in your community. And that could be to 2-year-olds, it could be to 15-year-olds, it might be to K through 12 students. And for some of you, I know that you work with adults, so you can also think through the lens, like, how can I differentiate this for the adults that I serve too? And then last but not least, community is at the heart of everything that we do at Breathe for Change. And so we also hope that through this experience, you feel so deeply connected to this community that's present in the room of amazing educators and leaders who obviously care deeply about using wellness as a vehicle for healing and social change. So just to ground us in our approach to social emotional learning. So at Breathe for Change, we tag on the F to SEL. So as you can see, it spells self, because we believe it's so critically important for us as educators, as parents, as leaders, to embody the practices that we are going to instill or that we hope to bring and teach to our kids. And so right in front of you are the 8 components of our social emotional learning curriculum. And in our 200-hour training that Desiree and I lead, along with other amazing educators and wellness experts across the country, we go deeply into each of these 8 components and also talk about how can we weave these components together to facilitate entire wellness workshops and professional development and what have you. But for today's purpose, we're going to focus solely in and hone in on this component of breath awareness through learning different breathing practices together. So Desiree, will you dig into what the benefits are of these types of practices?
Yes, of course. One of the great things about our breath work is it increases our presence, our ability to be present in the moment. And it really enhances our mindful awareness. And you can feel it as you practice it yourself. It physically calms the body and is able to focus your mind. And that applies to both children and adults. So as we practice it with our students, it's a gift to both of us, really.
Love it. So there's definitely a ton of science behind breathing, which we go deep into in our trainings. But for our purposes right now, as we continue to invite our students or whoever that we're working with to connect to their breath and to engage in the breathing practices that we will be doing together today, it takes us from the sympathetic nervous system or state, which is that fight or flight mode where we might be feeling super anxious or overwhelmed, or the signals of panic might be going off, to the parasympathetic state, which is that rest and digest state. So there's such a beautiful power in engaging in these practices, particularly when we might be feeling super stressed or overwhelmed. And we'll talk later about the distinction between responsive breathing and proactive breathing. And essentially, as you can see, it says vagus nerve here. So as we engage in the breath, the diaphragm slides along our vagus nerve, which is in the middle of those lungs right there, and sends a signal to the brain that we are safe. And this activates the parasympathetic nervous system, which naturally activates the body's healing and de-stressing system. So that is a very basic description of the science behind breathing, which again, we can talk about for hours and hours and hours, but wanted to give you just the summary here. So there's a deep power in engaging in these breathing practices. And you'll see as Desiree and I are leading you through many, we kind of use a similar format. So in the beginning of teaching each of these breathing practices, first, we're going to invite you to connect to the breath. So you're just building that breath connection. So often we're not even paying attention to our breathing at all. So the first thing that we do is connect to the breath. And then what that does is that builds self-awareness. Like we are becoming aware of our breath. So, wow, I observe that I'm breathing in and I observe that I am breathing out. And what this does is it supports us in cultivating that skill, the first SEL competency of self-awareness, which is such a gift, not only for us, but also our students. At the end of each of the practices, you'll notice that Desiree and I will likely ask you something along the lines of, bring your hands to your heart and notice how you feel right now. And the reason behind why we're asking you how you feel is because that also cultivates that self-awareness, but specifically your emotional awareness. And that is a critical skill that we want to support our youth in developing so that they not only have the tools to be aware of their breath, but what that does is it also helps them, or aware of their emotions, it also helps them manage their emotions down the line. Let's say they're feeling stressed or overwhelmed or overworked or frustrated or mad. Then in that moment of awareness, they can say, hey, I'm feeling frustrated. And if I do a breathing practice, I know it'll help me feel more calm, because when I breathe, Miss Choi or Desiree asked me, how do I feel? And I felt calm. So I'm going to do that now. And that is really supporting the self-management or regulation skills down the line. So as you can see, even in this structure, we are really honing in on the 2 of 5 foundational castle competencies of self-awareness and self-management.
Ilana, can I add something real quick?
Of course.
As an educator in the classroom, we did this a lot to start classes, whatever things were going on. If there was like tension in the classroom, we integrated it all the time. But one of my students, they were asked, what does Miss Choi do when she's upset? And they said, she takes a deep breath. And so they always knew, because I would model it for them, even if I got to a place where, you know what, I'm feeling really frustrated right now. I'm going to pause. I'm going to take some deep breaths so I know that I can calm myself down and make smart choices. And they actually identified that. So they knew when I was feeling that way. And then they themselves were also practicing it.
I love it. It's so, so powerful. That's the power of modeling right there, is when we actually embody these practices, our kids see it and they do it too. So one thing that we wanted to note before we dive into talking about how to use these practices with our youth is that there is a distinction between teaching breathing techniques to adults and teaching breathing techniques to young people. So breath awareness can include a formal pranayama practice or breath control practice, which is a practice that we go deep into in our meditation sections of our 200-hour training. However, what we want you to note is that retaining or holding the breath, which is a key component to many of our pranayama practices. So, it's like 1, 2, 3, inhale, hold at the top of the exhale, and then let it go. That is actually developmentally inappropriate for younger children, especially those who have experienced trauma. So when we guide these practices, we want to support our students in connecting to the more of the natural flow of the breath, to not holding the breath, because again, from a trauma-informed lens, when we experience like that heightened state of trauma or panic, and many of our students live in this chronic state because of their surroundings, naturally they hold the breath. And so we want to teach them how to deepen their breath, to connect to their breath, to breathe in towards their belly, because we'll go into this deeper when we talk about belly breathing. But what that does is it actually allows them to move away from the panicked state and have a deeper flow. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if we're clear. So when we're teaching breathing techniques to children, especially the younger ones, but I would say if your students, even high schoolers or middle schoolers, are new to breathing techniques, those pranayama practices, the ones where you retain or hold the breath, I would not go there, especially at first, unless they've had a lot of practice with the basic foundational breathing techniques that we'll go through with you. So we want to prevent that. All right. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there's a distinction between responsive breathing practices and proactive. So when we're talking about responsive, it's like distinction between being reactive and responsive. So let's say you notice your students or your own kids are stressed, panicked, frustrated, angry, sad, upset, whatever that heightened moment of emotion is. Be like, okay, I'm going to respond in this moment through this breathing practice, right? Oh, I notice, that's the self-awareness piece. I notice I'm feeling frustrated. I'm going to be responsive in this moment by drawing on one of these practices. So we can use these instead of reacting and screaming and doing things and teaching our students to not do things that they would later regret. How can we utilize these tools in the moment? And then proactive approach to this is super important. This is the idea that we can draw on these tools to literally proactively integrate this into our daily life, like a routine or a practice or a consistent way to start our class every day or start our morning. And when we start the day with 3 collective breaths or belly breathing or some of the other tools that we will teach you, what that does is over time, it decreases our overall reactivity. So we actually invite you all to try these out in both contexts. Teach the practices and be consistent with them. Don't just do it once and then one and done, because that doesn't build the muscle of, quote, the practice, right? That we really have a deeper impact in our brains when we're doing this consistently. And so we'll talk more about that as we go through each practice. And Desiree, do you want to talk about the castle competencies and purpose just a little bit more here?
Yes. So these breath awareness techniques feed into the castle competencies of self-awareness and self-management, like Ilana was just explaining. And it helps. I'm so sorry about the dog.
This is when you need to do the breathing practices. See? This would be a responsive approach. You're like, oh, the dog is barking. Let's take a deep breath.
But the purpose being to calm the mind and relax the body and really reduce your stress. And it's practice that I use all the time. And as you do it more with your students, it's something that they'll naturally do. And it's really great when we're doing these practices to take the time afterwards to really continue to develop that self-awareness of the practice and what it makes them feel like, so that when you're in those situations where, like Ilana was just talking about, those responsive situations, they can turn to these tools they have because they've been made aware. So by asking questions like, when would be a good time to do belly breathing? Or what does that make you feel like? And when they're very aware of those breathing practices and how they impact their personal well-being, they can readily implement them in their daily lives, and it will improve their own wellness and that self-awareness and that self-management.
Awesome. So now for the fun part. That was all the context, but now we're going to start digging in and practicing the things ourselves. So we are going to be introducing 5 of our favorite breathing practices that both of us have used and continue to use with literally youth of all ages, from the little tiny ones to the elementary, middle school, high schoolers, and adults of all ages. So we're going to be talking through 3 collective breaths, belly breathing, different approaches to those, breath of joy, rainbow breath, and flower breathing. And then we'll do those experientially. We'll each model how to do them for different ages. And then we'll end feeling really amazing. And hopefully you'll walk away with some awesome tools that you can use for the rest of time. And if you are a grad and you are like, oh, I know most of these, then think about how can you take even like deepen the layers, right? Every single time I'm in a training, even if it's with the same teachers over and over, it's like there's always something new to gain. And also, if you're grads, we'd love you to add any of your knowledge into the chat of ways that you've differentiated or scaffolded these so that the other amazing educators in this space can learn from you too. All right. So give me a thumbs up if you're ready to dive in. Awesome. So we will start with 3 collective breaths, literally my favorite practice that exists in the entire world. And Desiree has an amazing way that she does it. So I'll let you start.
So this is a really great tool for not only little kids, but big kids also, adults, because it gives us a visual to our breath work. It's called a Hermann Sphere, and you can pick them up off of, Amazon or wherever you find things. But it's a nice way to help give a visual to our collective work in our breath and our expanding of our lungs. So I invite you all to find a comfortable seat, whatever that might feel like for you. Maybe roll your shoulders back. Pretend you're like a flower and your head is growing up towards the sun. Just notice your breath. Start to tune in. And then we're going to take 3 collective breaths together. We're going to inhale, filling our lungs. And exhale, releasing. Again, big breath in. And let it go. And our last breath, our biggest breath of the day, inhale, filling those lungs with fresh air and sending it out. And then it's nice if you take your hands to your heart. You can just take a minute and check in with yourself and take notice of how you might be feeling right now. And as you're thinking about how you're feeling, see if there's 2 words that might describe what you're feeling right now after that practice of 3 collective breaths. And if you have those 2 words, I invite you to type them into the chat. Calm and relaxed, energized and aware, relaxed and light, expansive and full, safe and calm, grounded and confident, rested and calm, lighter and aware, comfortable in my body, calm and centered. Beautiful. And this is a great practice for kids and adults of all ages. You can use the Hermann Sphere. You don't need to use the Hermann Sphere, but it's nice to also open up the conversation afterwards. Like, when might be a good time to have 3 collective breaths? And if there's anybody who wants to either type in the chat bar, or if you want to raise a hand and you want to speak out loud, when might be nice for you to utilize these 3 collective breaths, either personally or even as an educator in your profession?
I love it. And one of the things that we can also do to add a little zest and play to it is you can incorporate a theme into the 3 collective breaths. So you don't just have to say inhale, exhale, breathe in, breathe out. Let's just say you really feel like there needs like a focus on gratitude today would really make an impact on you and your students. So what I might do if that's the case is all right, I'm going to turn my teacher hat on. So I invite you all to find a comfortable seated position. Maybe do some shoulder rolls to get any kinks out. Yeah. Then relax your shoulders down your back. Lengthen through your spine. And bring one hand to your heart and the other over that hand. And let's begin our time together with 3 collective breaths of gratitude. So take a deep breath of appreciation in. Give your love out. Again, inhale. Exhale with a smile. Breathe that gratitude into your heart and give it on out. And now just take a few moments here as you feel your heart beating beneath your palm to notice how you're feeling right now. And I invite those of you who feel comfortable to just come off mute for a moment and in one word, share how you're feeling.
A little excited, kind of a little bit of both.
Awesome.
Relieved.
Thanks, Terrence.
Centered.
Beautiful. I love it. So as you can see, Desiree asked all of us to express how we feel in the chat. I did take yourself off mute. Depending on how old your students are, they may not really be able to do either one, or they may be off of mute if you're doing it digitally. You can also, if you are in person, social distancing, or if you know that one day, actually we all know one day that we'll be able to get in person again. It's such a beautiful way to start morning circle or to have your students in the desk and say, hey, let's start class today with just 3 collective breaths. And it becomes routine, consistency. And then everyone, including you, will feel more however you just felt, calm, relaxed, centered, grounded, right? So this is such a beautiful way to make a difference in all of your lives.
One of our people in the chat, Heather, brought up a really great reminder. She does this as part of her community circle, but she says her first graders are also now leading the practice, which is another great thing that you can incorporate in your classrooms or whatever that might look like for you, whatever your teaching, sharing, gifting of this gift is you can offer it as you practice it more. They can also become the leaders and lead these practices.
And that is the most inspiring, empowering, and adorable thing that happens. And you will be obsessed when I started in pre-K, my one student who was the most resistant tantrumed every day that I did the breathing practices. When I asked him, would you like to lead them? Completely transformed everything. He proudly led them. And so you'll also see that when you offer these leadership opportunities to your students, something shifts in them too. So thank you so much, Heather, for bringing that up. All right. So now we are going to talk about belly breathing, which raise your hand if you've heard about belly breathing. Raise your hand if you've practiced belly breathing. Awesome. So we're going to show you a couple of unique ways to get your students engaged in belly breathing. So Desiree, why don't you start with the little ones?
All right, so now we all get to channel our inner small child. And I don't have it with me because it's in my classroom, but a little bear hat that I wear. But I'm gonna invite you all to be your inner child. And we're all gonna be little bears. You ready? Can you all take out your paws?
And come off mute for this one. It's so much more fun. So if you can, take yourself off mute so we can hear each other.
If we all see our little paws, and then when you're ready, we're gonna give a nice big bear growl. Are you ready? 1, 2, 3.
Desiree, come back off mute.
Thank you. Sorry. So you're going to take your bear paws and you're going to put your bear paws on your belly. Can you feel your belly? And then we're going to take some big belly bear breaths. Are you ready? So we're going to breathe so big that we feel it in our belly. Are you ready? Inhale. And exhale. You might even let out a little growl. Again. Inhale. And let it out. And we're going to do our last bear belly breath. Are you ready? Breathe in your biggest breath yet. Inhale. And let it out. Oh, nice job, little bears. And then you can check in with yourself and see how you're feeling. When might be a good time to use a big belly bear breath?
Can we have someone courageously come off mute and share? When might be a good time for you to do the bear belly?
I would say
breathing?
after lunch, when everybody's a little squirrely.
I teach improv and theater, so and I have some good exercises to get kids sort of loose and jokey. But this would be a great addition to that, to get them in the room and present and ready to play.
Wonderful.
Love
Thank you
it.
for sharing.
I was thinking that during a transition, that sometimes we need to make ourselves more focused in knowing where we're going, and sometimes just having that deep breath keeps us to the point where we know what we're going to do next, and still get to be silly at the same time.
Totally. I mean, adults need the bear belly breathing because sometimes we take ourselves too seriously. And I just saw in the chat, people, I couldn't stop laughing. That was so funny. I mean, also bring it to the older ones because it's funny, right? So it's nice to lighten up the mood, especially in times like right now. So that's definitely one of our like foundational practices that we would do with the little ones. But some of you who are middle school teachers or high school teachers might be like rolling your eyes and being like, you think my students are going to go with that? Right? No, thank you, Ilana and Desiree. That's not happening. And even those who are working with adults who you're trying to get on board to engage with these practices, you might be thinking the same thing. So one of the ways that I love to consistently invite people to engage with belly breathing and all types of these SEL practices for that matter is to actually kind of frame it as an experiment. It's like a science experiment. You're drawing on research. Let's see what this actually feels like. Just play with me here. No need to like be like, do this with me. We're doing it. It's an experiment. So I'm going to put on my teacher hat. You're like my middle schoolers or high schoolers. So, all right, everyone. So I've been getting really into these breathing practices recently, and I would love to just do an experiment with all of you. So will you play with me here? Give me a thumbs up if you want to just kind of play and put on your experimenter scientist hat on. Cool. So what we're going to do is we're going to experiment and test out two types of breathing: chest breathing and belly breathing. And so you may be thinking like, what are those? Well, we'll try it in our bodies. We'll see how it makes us feel, and then we'll talk about it. So I invite you first to bring your hands to your chest. So like right below your neck. And we're just going to breathe into the chest and back up. And we'll do that a couple times together. And I want you to just notice, like, how's that feel? Cool? So, all right, everyone, inhale into your chest. Exhale, let it go. Breathe into your chest. Exhale, release. Again, breathe in just to your chest. Exhale, let it go. And now just keep your hands there and notice how that felt. How did the chest breathing feel in your body? And if you could chat it into the chat, I would love that. Rushed, shallow, short, constricted, dizzy. Ooh, doesn't sound too great. Unfinished, short of breath, out of breath. All right, well, let's physically shake that out. All right, and now let's try to do belly breathing together. So now instead of placing your hands at your chest, bring your hands to your belly. And we'll do 3 belly breaths together. So inhale, fill your belly with breath. Exhale, let it go. Again, inhale, breathe in towards your belly. Exhale, release. Again, breathe in to your belly. Exhale, let it go. And now I invite you to bring your hands over your heart and just pause here for a moment to check in and notice how you're feeling now after those belly breaths. And you can chat it in, or you can come off mute and share how you feel in a word or two.
More relaxed.
More relaxed. I see in the chat, connected, smooth, good stretch, calmer, settled, balanced, completely connected, sufficient, happier, present, aware, energies are open. All right, so now my question to you is, if you know, which one shall we in general practice more of? What would serve you? You can put that in the chat. See a lot of bellies coming through. Amazing. So I see no chest breathing. So I think we're in 100% consensus. Yeah. So the reason why I had all of you do an experiment with me is because so often when we are living in stress, or if we've experienced trauma, or we're constantly frustrated, or there's a heightened level of anxiety, then we live actually in the chest, right? Our breath is short, it's panicked, and it's actually lives exactly right here. So if you notice, like when I'm feeling that sense of anxiety or stress or tension, likely you're not feeling as calm and focused and happy and present as you did when you were belly breathing, right? So that's why I had you feel the distinction between both. But from now on, I'm not going to invite you to do the chest breathing, because that's ultimately what we want to move away from, right? But you'll likely, all of us, including myself, will likely find ourselves living in that more panicked state, especially with everything that's going on with the pandemic and in our world right now. And so the invitation is for you, when you feel that, when you notice that you're in that state of chest breathing, can you sit for a moment and intentionally breathe in towards your belly, right? So taking off the teacher hat. So that's how I would introduce it. And after I've done that once, I'll never have them continuously practicing chest breathing versus belly breathing, because that would be terrible for people, right? It's okay to teach something that you shouldn't do like once or twice. I wouldn't be like, all right, let's go back into the chest breathing, because that's not supportive. But learning that distinction and having that research, doing the research, gives a lot more buy-in to the practice, and people understand that distinction. So you good with that?
I got a great question in the chat from someone who was asking. Andrea asked, what is the position in coaching breathing? Do you cue in through the nose and out through the mouth? Or is it more of a generic direction to fill your chest or fill your belly?
Awesome. So I typically don't cue in through the nose or out through the mouth, because what I really want them to do is to just naturally connect to their breath. And some people will have naturally breathe more easily through the nose and out through the mouth, or through the nose and out through the nose. Different breathing techniques, like in our training, if you pursue a deeper training, different breathing techniques will ask you to do breathe in through the nose, out through the nose. Others will do in through the nose, out through the mouth. They have different intentions and purposes. But for the sake of teaching and introducing this at the foundational level, I would just cue the inhale and the exhale. We want them to feel natural and to not have it feel too sort of planned out, if that makes sense. Yeah. Great question. All right. So Desiree, you want to do breath of joy?
Yes. And breath of joy, I'll give you a little reference. As a classroom teacher, I'd always start my classes with 3 collective breaths of some sort and a check-in of some sort. And you learn all these different types of check-ins and breathing techniques through Breathe for Change, the training. And based on how students respond to me is oftentimes when I would choose what type of breath might follow. And the breath of joy, as you can imagine, is a breath that is a little more enlivening. It brings joy. The idea is to bring joy. So I'm going to walk you guys through a silly breathing practice to breathe some joy into you. So if you are comfortable, you can stand, find a position where you can stand. You can also do it from a seated position if that's better for your body. I'm going to try to stand and see if you can see me. Okay. And we're going to stand with our feet planted into the earth, with our feet right below our hips, rolling your shoulders back, feeling nice and tall, strong and planted. And we're going to breathe in joy. And what we're going to do, I'm going to show you first so you get an idea. You're going to breathe in the first breath and then a little bit more. You're going to add a little bit more and then a little bit more. So it'll be like 3 short breaths. So you can watch first and then we'll do it together. So you inhale a little bit more and a little more. And then you exhale all the joy. So you're filling yourself with this energizing breath. So we're going to all practice together. Are you ready for a big breath of joy? On 3 count. Ready? Inhale. A little bit more, and then let it all out. Again, breathe it in, filling your lungs with joy, all the way up, and let it out. Our last one, our biggest breath of joy. Inhale, add a little bit more joy, filling with joy, and then send it out. And then when you're ready, you can come back to standing. You might even take your palms to your heart, and check in with yourself. After doing those 3 breaths of joy, what are you feeling? Do you feel the heartbeat under your hands? How does that make you feel? When might be a good time to do a breath of joy? And if anybody is feeling brave and courageous and would like to come off mute and share with us.
It's really activating.
Totally.
Maybe when you're tired.
Mm.
It hurt my head a little. I'll be honest. Because I stood up, I think, and then did it.
Mm. So that's something that is great to be aware of. And you can notice, like, maybe when you cue your students who've been sitting for a really long time, it's like, all right, so let's slowly stand up together to transition. And you can decide to do the practice as fast as you want or as slow as you want based on how it feels in your own body. So it's a perfect example of how to differentiate the practice for what works for you and others. So I am going to do one more variation of breath of joy, and I will invite you to stand back up with me. Forgive me for asking you twice. But before you do, I want you to this time come off mute. And the reason I do this is because it's called the breath of joy. And just like bare belly breathing, there is definitely a power in having a connection to the voice. So come on off mute. Beautiful. I love it. And now stand up tall. And I invite you to lift your arms up 3 times with short inhales, and then I'll go like this. And then on the exhale, we're going to make a huge sound. Okay. All right. So on your marks, get set, go. Awesome. Again. Again.
That's silly.
Amazing. Now stand up and bring your hands to your heart. Notice how you feel. And now shout out in one word or 2 words or a bark. How do you feel right now?
Great. Great.
Happy.
Guys.
Energized.
Love it.
Great.
Activated.
Awesome. So now I give you permission to take a seat, get comfortable again. And the reason why we wanted to show you both examples is Desiree's was an amazing way to do it, right? It's an easy way to quickly get people energized. But mine was that I had another intention. Mine is also to like build community and to get people feeling more playful, right? And when you hear those voices together, it has that effect. And the other reason we wanted to incorporate the breath of joy into this workshop is because, as you'll notice in the 3 collective breaths and the belly breathing, when we asked you how you felt, most of you said like relaxed or calm or present. And in this one, when we asked you how you felt, like energized, playful, right? Different breathing techniques have different outcomes or learning objectives, so to speak. And so you can draw on the breath of joy when your students are feeling exhausted, or maybe there's a sense of just kind of like doneness, or they're tired, right? They've been sitting for so long, or you've been sitting so long, you need some movement. So that would be an example of an energizing breathing practice. All right, so Desiree, will you do your rainbow breath?
Yes, and I will show you 2 variations of rainbow breath, one for the younger and one for a little bit older. But we're going to be standing again. You can also do this from seated if that's what's comfortable for you. But we're going to take some rainbow breaths. And when I like to do this with the little ones, I like to sing the rainbow song because they're still learning their rainbow colors. So we'll sing red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, purple. Those are the colors of the rainbow. And then we're going to take rainbow breaths. We're going to take big, giant rainbow breaths, imagining all those beautiful, bright colors. Inhale them up to the sky. Have your palms kiss, and then exhale, bring them back down to your heart. I'm going to do it again. Big rainbow breath up. And exhale, bring it down to your heart. And the last one, the biggest rainbow breath, all those bright, beautiful colors. Inhale up, filling the world with all that brightness. And on your exhale, bring it down into your heart and seal it in there so you have it with you for today, all those bright colors. And I like to do this one when we need a little energizing. And it can look the same for bigger kids, but you don't have to sing the rainbow song, of course. But it's nice because you're up and you're moving your body, and you're also cueing in that brightness and those light feelings, and they're sealing it in. So how did that one make you feel versus the breath of joy? Maybe you want to type it into the chat bar. Want more, good, content. That's that body movement. Great, expansive, happy, positive. And you can add lots of little variations like, oh, we're going to bring our bright rainbow colors all the way down to our toes. Cover your toes in all those rainbow colors. So there's lots of different ways you can integrate that with the little ones and the big ones, really.
Amazing. So, Desiree, you want to show how you would do it with the older ones?
Yeah, it would look really similar, but without the rainbow. Without the song. So you could do it standing or sitting. I'm going to stand up nice and tall. Ground your feet into the earth. Your feet are right below your hips. Roll your shoulders back. Just take notice of your body right now. Let yourself ground down into the earth. Feeling supported. We're going to take 3 big rainbow breaths. Imagine all the bright colors. You're going to inhale them up towards the sky. Kiss your palms together. And exhale them down. Again, inhale up. Filling the sky with color. Exhale. Bring it down to your heart center. And our last one, our biggest, brightest, beautiful rainbow. Inhale up towards the sky. Kiss your palms, and this time take all those colors and seal them in so you have them with you for the rest of the day. And maybe take a moment with your hands here and check in with yourself. How are you feeling today? What might you need? What might you need to give yourself? And that's where I might invite them to check in and see how they're doing.
Awesome. I love it. So you can see a lot of these, it's just a subtle difference between how you might differentiate it for the younger ones and the older ones in some cases. And in others, there's just completely different techniques that you can use, just like we did in belly breathing, depending on who your children or youth are that you are bringing these to. So last but not least, this is one of my favorites. It's called flower breathing. So I invite you all to find that comfortable seat. Bring your wrists together, your pinkies together, and your thumbs together. And then I invite you to bring your flower to your heart and look down at your flower and imagine what color it is, what type of flower it is. Maybe it's a rose or tulip or magnolia. And then smell your flower. And now I invite you to inhale, reach and blossom your flower up to the sky. Exhale, close your flower for the winter. Again, inhale, blossom your petals up to the sky. Exhale, close your flower for the winter. Again, inhale, blossom your beautiful flowers. See this amazing garden that we're creating. Exhale, back to your heart. And now we'll do a community garden. So this is going to get super creative. Bring your wrists together with the person next to you. And some are on video, some aren't. That's okay. And then bring your thumbs together and your pinkies together. And then inhale, blossom your flower up to the sky. Exhale, close our community garden for the winter. We're resting. Inhale, grow your beautiful flowers up to the sun. Exhale. Last one, blossom your flowers up to the sky. Exhale, bring them on down. And now bring your hands over your heart. Take a moment to check in. How are you feeling? And then I invite you all to either come off mute, share how you feel, or send it in the chat.
Hi, I feel boundaryless and extended.
Ooh, beautiful. Thank you. I see calming, connected, centered, peaceful, energized, renewed, lovely community. I love the community piece. Yeah. So there's so many different ways now that so many of us are teaching in the online space, you can get creative with it, right? That's like such a beautiful way to build community. And so many of these practices, you can weave in different things to have people feel connected to each other. And that was just one example of how to do that. So thank you all so much for sharing in this wonderful journey with us.